We think a stop-and-go penalty for Michael Schumacher. I wonder what he's done, unless he passed somebody under the yellow flag. He's in the pit lane. Schumacher in the pit lane. Well, that means he'll win the race because he crosses the start-finish line to, yes, it's lap 60, to take his penalty. Remember, they've repositioned the start, but the finish line and therefore the timing beams are back there at Woodcote. Michael Schumacher's pit is past that point.
There is Mika Häkkinen, and Michael Schumacher has won the British Grand Prix.
So Michael Schumacher won the race going down the pit lane. Schumacher in the pit lane. Oh, and they nearly touched.
Drawing out very quickly.
Michael Schumacher has won the British Grand Prix.
Can Raikkonen sweep in? Yeah!
Brilliant strategy this afternoon.
That feels so bad.
Well, that was one of the quirkiest and least expected race strategies in F1 history. This is Workday Winning Strategies, and I'm joined by two F1 strategy moguls, Ruth Buscombe Divey and Bernie Collins. Thanks for joining me, where we're going to see 3 episodes of our 3 most memorable races, one from each decade, the 90s, the noughties, and the 10s. And we start with Michael Schumacher's unconventional win at the 1998 British Grand Prix.
And I'm pretty sure that Michael Schumacher has won the British Grand Prix. He's made his stop-start. He's crossed the finish line before Mika Häkkinen. But that is very, very, very unofficial. We've got to wait for the official news.
Ruth, I know this one's one of your favourites.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites. It's memorable, it's quirky. You've got a bit of Ross Brawn strategy in there. And the fastest car didn't win. I think it's got quite a lot.
Can't go wrong with that, Bernie.
I think there's a lot going on, in this decade, but this year as well, we've got Hungary a few races later where Ferrari again win by doing an extra pit stop, which is not normally the case to win in Hungary. So lots to pick from, I think.
Yeah, there certainly were. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Any other race from the 90s you'd have chosen, put it in the comments. But now, let's get right into it. Ruth, in a nutshell, what makes this strategy so crucial?
What makes this strategy special is that it is, to this day, the only time we've ever seen the race won in the pits.
That's bonkers. What have we had? 75 years of Formula One? 74, almost 75. Crazy stat. And a crazy time, Bernie. Back to the 1990s, 1998. Talk us through Formula One at this time.
Yeah, there's a few key differences to what we have today. The biggest one being refueling. So cars could stop during the race, put some fuel in. The pit wall at this stage, beginning of the race, was starting to think, how long do we want to go in the race? How much fuel are we adding to these cars? How many stops are we going to do? So big difference in consideration to what we have now. With the return of grooved, slick tyres, which we'd not seen since the 70s, and we had 2 tyre manufacturers. So Bridgestone and Goodyear both competing, different cars running different tyres. So lots strategically going on compared to what we have today.
Yeah, loads of differences. It's always quite fun looking back at the old races and remembering how the rules were just so different, how the races would all shake out so differently as well, including from a strategic point of view. But let's dive in then to 1998. We're on the grid at Silverstone. We have a 0-time world champion on pole position, Mika Häkkinen, alongside a 2-time world champion at this point, Michael Schumacher. And on a very greasy track, as the lights go out, we get an immediate change just behind those two as Jacques Villeneuve had a great qualifying at the Williams to be 3rd on the day, is jumped straight away there, gets away horribly. And all of their strategy plans probably gone out the window at that point as David Coulthard comes through. So we have 2 McLarens and a Ferrari at the front. And if you're looking at this at the start, Ruth, you're probably thinking, we can get some dry tyres on soon.
Yeah, but it is British summer, isn't it? So it's still 1998, but it's the same as it is now. You've got to be considering on the pit wall, is it going to be getting dry and we're going to be able to use those grooved, slick tyres? Or is it potentially even going to be getting wetter?
And that was the big thing with how this one turns out. So the 2 McLarens and the Ferrari of Schumacher out front. Coulthard passes Schumacher early on. We got a McLaren 1-2, but it doesn't stay like that for long. Poor old DC, he has a spin coming into Abbey Corner, which leaves Häkkinen v Schumacher.
Was that David Coulthard spinning off? Oh no, David Coulthard out of the race. David, a bit too ambitious on that move.
Häkkinen then has this wild moment coming through Bridge Corner. That's high speed. We don't use that bit of track anymore, but pretty intense.
It's really intense. And from the pit wall, it's about reacting. How much time is he going to lose? Is the car in a good condition? And obviously, as we can see there, throws the safety car out. So you've really got to be on top of your strategy plans at this point.
Yeah, the conditions are absolutely rank at this point. Peak British summer. So, Ruth, let's have a look at the race plot, and we can finally deep dive some numbers here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a race of two halves, isn't it? The first half of the race, you've got your kind of McLarens. They were, on average, the fastest car that season in the grey, out front, leading the race, 1-2, and the Ferrari of Schumacher has no chance. Then it all changes, right? DC, he has that DNF and then that safety car. It completely changes everything and sets the scene for making this race one that we're still talking about, years or decades later. It does three things. The safety car, bit like it does now, it packs that field up. So it brings the Ferrari of Schumacher back into contention.
He was toast.
He was out.
He was 40 seconds away.
And also, it means that we have a potential minor infraction. It was on for a little bit of a debate that went on that meant that there was a penalty that got applied to Schumacher's Ferrari later. And Häkkinen himself had a little bit of a moment, which means that you've got a potential penalty. Now we've got the fastest car is now carrying quite a lot of damage. And a debate that will rage on for months, if not years after, as to how this race ended up how it did.
Yeah, so not only has Häkkinen had his massive lead wiped out, he's then lost the lead with another mistake at Beckett's, bouncing across the grass again. Schumacher takes the lead, but let's get into that infraction then from Schumacher. In fact, let's hear from Michael Schumacher straight after the race.
I was behind the safety car for I don't know how many laps, and then everybody knew what happened. What I still don't know what was the reason for my penalty. Why did it have to come in? I mean, I thought it was maybe the situation with Giancarlo, but I didn't think I passed him on the line. I don't know what else was wrong.
So Schumi's not very sure how he managed to overtake under the safety car. He doesn't quite know it. And I can understand why, because when you look at these conditions, this is just disgusting. This is shades of Schumacher driving into the back of Coulthard in Spa. Trying to lap cars at this point is so difficult. I assume they're all taking this into account on the pit wall as well, because in these conditions, Schumacher's actually losing so much time here under racing conditions.
You definitely are, and I think one of the things in this is they don't have the data or the video footage that we have these days, so it's a bit uncertain, the positions on track, and even for the FIA to go through it after.
And here is our yellow flag then. We've got his future teammate, Rubens Barrichello, in the wall, in the Stewart, bringing out the yellow flag in the eventual safety car. And we clearly have Michael Schumacher coming past Alex Wurz. We missed it on the actual footage at the time, so no wonder everyone was scratching their heads working what was going on. But the FIA did get word of it, and Ruth, the whole face of the end of the race changed.
Yeah, so an eagle-eyed marshal wrote down on a piece of paper at 15:15, he overtook him under a yellow. Timestamp on a piece of paper, because that was a tech that they were using back then.
That's pressure for a marshal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, good.
Michael Schumacher did this.
You wouldn't want to be in an ink pen, would you? And so that goes up to the stewards, and for a variety of reasons, it all gets delayed in terms of actually when this penalty for this overtake actually gets deployed. It's 31 minutes later, so the overtake is on lap 43. It's not until lap 58 of 60 that Ferrari are actually informed that they have a 10-second penalty. And even at this point, it's still not clear what kind of penalty they have, whether it's a 10-second stop and go penalty or 10 seconds added onto race time. And with only 2 racing laps to go, what can they do? How can they still win the race?
It's plus 10 seconds or we must stop?
I don't know.
No.
Time penalty.
Time penalty.
What would you do? At that point, if it was a 10-second stop-go penalty, you have to serve it within 3 laps. The ambiguity confused everyone. Bernie, what did the geniuses on the pit walls do?
Well, the geniuses in those days from Ferrari, there's a few things. They thought they'll extend it. They'll not go exactly the right lap. Michael Schumacher was opening a gap to the car behind. So the longer you can leave it, the better. The confusion over whether it's a 10-second penalty or a 10-second stop-go is really important because it makes a massive difference to the penalty implied. He only had 22 seconds, so there wasn't enough time to serve either of those penalties, get back on track and be still in the lead of the race. So they did the only thing they thought they could do, which is stop on the final lap.
Yeah, so if there's a stop-go penalty, Häkkinen wins the race. And all of this is for nothing. But you can see Schumacher giving it the beans right to the final corner. He obviously knows. He got team radio in those days. He knows that this is still so critical. So he razzes it straight into the pits. Through he comes. But there's a technicality here because we'll get into the timing line around this place. As Häkkinen comes through, and he's going to be the first car to actually cross the road on the track. Schumacher stops in the box. He's already the race winner at this point.
He's in the pit lane. Schumacher in the pit lane. Well, that means he'll win the race because he crosses the start-finish line.
And Ruth, that is because
the timing line. Because so this is actually the new Silverstone layout, but it was similar in the old Silverstone layout in that the timing line on the pits and the timing line on the track are very early, which means that the pit boxes are after. So Schumacher crosses the control line, finishes the race, wins the race on track as the first car to take the flag, and then pays the penalty after. I think you need a drawing of a theoretical pit box in there.
That
Perfect.
would be where he comes in. So he
Perfect.
comes in, he's already won the race, then he sits there for 10 seconds pretending to take a penalty, but he's already won the race. It's brilliant.
And it leads to lots of confusion. There's confusion over, like Ruth said, when the penalty was employed. Is it served or not served in this instance? And this is a bit of an outlier, this Silverstone layout, that the timing line is before the pit box. And that's so crucial to this case because, like you say, he had already finished the race.
And understandably, still the case all these years on. The opposition are not happy about this. McLaren go protesting after the race. They say, well, he didn't serve the penalty.
The penalty was taken after the start-finish line. And again, that seems to be wrong, but we'll just have to make quite sure about the regulations and then we'll take whatever steps are appropriate.
Yeah, and it was protested. A few things were protested. The fact that it took so long to tell when the penalty was available. So that delay of 31 minutes that Ruth said, that wasn't a regulation. The confusion over which type of penalty it was, also out there. And then they went back after the race and they actually said, OK, we've applied the penalty incorrectly, so no penalties applied, and he's won the race regardless.
Yeah, it was an absolutely baffling end to a really gripping Grand Prix as well, that one. And I have to say, for a driver that has been a controversial figure in some of his moves in the past, this was such a minor indiscretion, the pass on Alex Wurz, for what could have been a major penalty had McLaren got their way. But in the end, no penalty and a smart bit of thinking for Ferrari just to cover off their bases.
I don't even remember I've passed him because, I mean, you pass someone but you don't even see because of the spray. And that is the reason why you don't see flags. And if you imagine I'm following someone that close, then you're lucky to see the road. That's it. We have to clarify now what was the story and what we should have done.
We'll finish by talking about Silverstone in the modern day because, Ruth, there's still pit lane shenanigans going on right to the flag even in the last years.
Yeah, so this is Lewis Hamilton winning in 2020 on 3 wheels. And he had this large margin to P2 driver Verstappen behind him. And that margin was obviously going down because, 4 wheels generally faster than 3. And they chose on the Mercedes pit wall to drive the proper, lovely, long way round. And then that lead only went down to about 5 seconds, I believe, at the line. But if they dived into the pits, actually, because the rule was no longer written down anyway, they would have theoretically been able to win the race in the pits, which means it would have happened twice. But they did not. And then we changed the rules after. Therefore, Schumacher's win in the pits at Silverstone will be the only time it ever happens.
So, ironically, this was the one year where he might have been able to do it, and the one year he needed it, finishing on 3 wheels as well. But there we have it. Still, Schumacher's pit lane win is the only time. The next one is going to be featuring one from the noughties. Thanks very much to you two for looking through that. Always a pleasure to look through some of the golden strategies with our strategy moments once again. But yeah, noughties one coming up. Have a guess what it's going to be.